Okay, it's 8:15. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I just wish it was a little more small font
Yeah.
and more words on the page. But
More
other than
words,
that,
okay.
Commissioner, we do have a hard stop on the bond council at
Okay.
9:30.
Okay,
And I understand that one of you has a hard stop today at 11.
yes, yeah, okay. All right. That being said, anybody want to move to approve the agenda?
Oh, I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda with approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of December 17th and approval of claims for January 14th. Are there any questions or comments?
I did have a comment on the claims and there's a vendor, Zai. Oh, can you hand me the claims document and maybe I can pull it right off there? And what we signed there. That's fine. That's not where it is first. Okay.
Let's do that.
Okay, the vendor's name is Ivoxy, and I just wasn't familiar with the vendor. Could you tell me what they do for us?
This is out of memory, so I can ask for.
And maybe follow up later by email too is fine.
Yeah, I think there are one of our IT vendors, and I believe they do the penetration testing, but I have to verify that with Kirby.
Yeah, I thought that was another vendor, but okay, yeah, please, I
That
just
is-
knew.
That is correct, Chris.
Oh.
Commissioner O'Toole. That's right.
Thank you. guys.
They're doing penetration testing.
Did we enter into, are they a subcontractor or what did we approve that? at the commission?
We've got a couple of
We
grants.
have a PSA with them. We did late last year.
Okay.
And then a couple of work orders. I mean, and then Paul Sigmund actually kind of runs the grants. I haven't worked on the grants that he's got from those guys, but it looks like Mike might even have some additional information on this.
So Critical Informatics is our penetration tester.
Sorry about that.
Avoxy covers so we have a virtualized environment with our virtual servers and all that. They're the vendors who we purchase the hardware and the software licenses through for our network structure.
Okay,
Thanks, Mike.
thank you, Mike.
Without any other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to public comment. Any of the public want to comment here in the room? Public? No? Okay, any hands raised? I can't see any. All right, there will be a second chance for public comment towards the end of the meeting. And now we'll start the public hearing.
All right, commissioners, let me just a little background, and then I'm going to kick this over to Annette. Plant 1 has been in incipient failure for a couple of years now, and it's gotten to the point where we've been down to 1 of 5 or 1 of 6 output pumps available. And we've gotten it back up to where it's in kind of decent shape for pumping, but the plant itself is literally falling apart. We're going to be spending millions of dollars a year in emergency repairs, and eventually we're going to lose it and it's going to go offline. We've been working on this for years, and early in 2024, we prepared a capital plan. We reviewed it with our customers, and especially our 2 major customers that pay about 75% of the bills. And they wanted us to do this, and they agreed to pay for it. We put the capital plan fully together and presented it to the commission. You guys did not object. And then that was in the summer of 2024. And then we included that in our budgets and rates. So we had an idea for the level of financing that was going to be required. And that's why we had large rate increases in our 2025 rates for industrial water. So that was all in there, and that was a large increase, and it was called out specifically for the new obligations. So on a related kind of parallel note, we've been looking at how to finance. So the idea was you have to finance. We can't do this on cash flow alone. So we've been looking at how to finance for about 2.5 years, and having run down all the bank options, they're either too short-term or too expensive or both. And when you look at other options, there are some private placement things that governments just don't do. And then selling bonds. There's 3 ways to sell bonds, and we have reviewed this at fairly great length, so I'm just gonna very summary cover it. There are general obligation bonds, which are to be repaid out of tax revenue, general fund type tax revenue. There are revenue bonds, which are to be repaid strictly from customer revenue. And then there's an animal in between called a limited tax general obligation bond. Those are ones that are assumed to be paid from revenue, and should revenue fail, you have agreed to use your taxing authority to cover the difference. When you look at the cost of these things, the general obligation bonds are the cheapest, the revenue bonds are the most expensive, and typically the LTGO bonds are in between, but cheaper than the revenue bonds. All 3, I must point out, are backed by your taxing authority. If you have a straight revenue bond and you can't repay it, you will be obligated to raise taxes anyway to cover the difference if you're a general government. That's the assumption that is made when people buy a bond from a government agency. And so staff is recommending the LTGO option, and we've got a lot of folks here. We've done a ton of work getting this ready, and I think you've seen that in your package. And with that, I'd really like to kick it over to Annette, and she can introduce the team who you see now, Cynthia and Scott. Annette?
Good morning, commissioners. I apologize. I've been fighting a cold for a week, so I have that radio show voice going on. So I would like to introduce what we have in front of us for the next 2 items. Is the first thing is a TEFRA hearing, and it's just basically a public hearing where we open the floor up to anybody who has any public people who have comments on the bonds, close that, and then we have the resolution for the bonds. And then people who's here to help answer our questions and to back Chris and I up is Scott Bauer. He's with the Northwest Municipal Advisors, and also Cynthia Weed. She's with K&L Gates. She's our bond attorney. I have worked with both of these people since I've started here. So they are long-term, they know what they're doing, they know about the PUD, and yeah, they're good people. So probably what to do is, if we wanted to start with that, the TEFRA here. Well, do we want to do the TEFRA hearing, or do we want to? Okay, let's do the TEFRA hearing first. Cynthia says thumbs up. So Jamie, if you wanted to open up the hearing for that.
Okay, we will open up the TEFRA hearing, public hearing.
Anybody, any comments?
Yeah, I don't, is there anybody? Okay. How's your time?
Hold on 1 second, sir. My name's Todd Lagaste, and I'm here as a private citizen. And I read through the packet, and one of the things that jumped out to me, and I was kind of hoping that the hearing part of this would be at the end, so maybe some questions would be answered, but that's okay. Hopefully this can be answered, is the current 3 million-ish of existing bonds. It talks about in the packet whether or not those need to be rolled into, that they may be rolled into, and then at one point it sounds like they are rolled into the new bonds that are going to be issued. And I guess I just have a question about the interest rates specifically, and just to give a little background, I was certified as an investment professional with the credit union board of directors that I'm on, so I have just a little bit of background there to understand. But on $3 million of bonds, 1% interest is about $30,000 a year. That's a significant amount. And if we're potentially looking at a higher rate, I would hope that the commission would exercise its fiduciary responsibility and make sure that if we can prevent having to roll those in, that we do. So that's just a question that I would have had.
If I may? So, Mr. Lagacy, in the documentation, and you gotta kind of dig in to find it, but we've got a bunch of caveats in there, and I believe that our bogey is 3%. And that would mean that we're save about $80,000 on the issue. And if we can't do that, we're not gonna refinance those bonds. And that's in there, for the exact reasons that you cite. If we can't save enough money to do this, doesn't make any sense. But what we're trying to do is preserve the option if when you get close to close, and it looks like we can actually save our customers some money, we have the ability to do just that.
Thank you.
And I would defer to, and I got a thumbs up from my bond counsel. That's good. And from our financial advice.
Is there anyone on the line that would like to comment during the public hearing? I don't see any hands raised. Should we close this public hearing?
We can close the Tefra piece.
Yeah, okay. We will close the Tefra piece of the public hearing.
And at this point, I think we'd like to invite Scott. You had a presentation to kind of quickly walk us through. So I don't know the process here. We go ahead and now this becomes a regular public
We don't
hearing.
need a regular meeting.
Yes. Don't we have a bond resolution public hearing? Don't we do that now?
Cynthia? I don't think so. You're muted.
You muted.
Still muted. Mike, maybe?
I
There we
think
go.
I'm unmuted now. You don't have to have a public hearing on the bond resolution itself. However, we can take comments and questions and be responsive to any comments and questions that come in. Scott Bauer actually has more of a formal presentation to actually walk through the structure of the bond issue. And I, of course, am always glad to speak about the bond resolution and answer any questions about the bond resolution. I will say this again, that I am very sure that you would prefer, I'm more anxious to talk about bonds than you are to listen to me wander on and talk about the technology of the bond issue itself. But I always welcome any questions. As far as I'm concerned, I love to talk about bonds and will always answer any questions that anyone has, either in the room or online.
So Chair, I think what I'd like to suggest is that we let the presentations happen and then we have a comment period for people to make comments after they've heard the presentation.
And for discussion between commissioners.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. Scott, are you ready with your presentation?
I am. Thank you very much, commissioners. Allow me to share the presentation and confirm that that everyone is able to see it.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you.
Terrific. Okay, so let me start to step through it. So what we'll touch on today, we have financing goals, a little bit on the bond market. We'll look at the district's outstanding debt, the plan for these 2025 bonds that we're talking about here today, and the schedule of the financing. So the financing goals, again, to fund water treatment plant number 1 improvements. So that's to provide $65 million or up to $65 million for that. It may be sold in 1 or 2 series. That depends on how much allocation from the state that we get for private activity bond capacity. So we are selling tax exempt private activity bonds. And again, that allocation is dependent from the state. Based on the preliminary information we've received from the state, we expect to receive enough that would fund about $57 million of the 65. If we want to then complete that 65, then we would sell a small taxable series. We would structure that so that it pays off first, since taxable debt is more expensive than tax-exempt private activity debt. Or the alternative is to potentially reduce the borrowing and just fit it within the capacity that we receive. And so therefore, that would then just be a single series needed for the $65 million. We'll also be funding a reserve account. General obligation bonds don't generally need a reserve account, but this is, we're funding one here because if in the unlikely event that a tax levy is ever needed, it would help bridge that gap between the revenues and the tax levy. So again, we'll be funding a reserve account here. We'll be going to Moody's ratings now for a bond rating on these bonds. Currently, the district's publicly issued bonds are rated AA3. That's a very, very good rating. That's 4 notches below the top rating of Moody's, which is AAA. And we're looking to close the sale and get you the proceeds within this first quarter of 2025. Another piece of this is a potential refunding. So as was pointed out in the resolution, you will be authorizing the ability for the district to refinance your outstanding 2013 bonds. But those bonds will only be refinanced if we meet and exceed a minimum savings threshold of 3%. So again, those will remain outstanding if we do not achieve that, and they may be refunded if we exceed that. That'll be up to, you'll be delegating to staff. So staff could also say that 3% isn't high enough and may seek more. So, but again, at the very least, we need to exceed 3%. And finally, as General Manager Chris pointed out, these are being issued as limited taxed in obligation bonds. So those are the same security as what the district has issued before, and as we will see, your outstanding bonds. So if a tax levy isn't needed to be imposed at the time we issue these, the full expectation is that the district's revenues will pay for these bonds and your outstanding bonds. However, if a tax levy is ever needed to be imposed, it will need to be imposed at the maximum annual debt service of the outstanding bonds. And that's in order to create sufficient bank levy capacity. Because once a tax levy is imposed, based on current tax or state law, you would only be able to increase that levy amount by 1% each year plus new construction. Moving on to the bond market. So the graphs you see below really show the same data, just one zoomed in to the past couple of years on the right side versus back to 1986. And this is looking at very long-term interest rates. So it's an index of 20 bonds and looking at the 20th year of those bonds. So again, long-dated interest rates. So from a historical perspective, you see interest rates have basically come down from 1986. Of course, there's periods of up and down, but again, a general trend downward. You see then in 2020 and 2021, of course, those are the pandemic years, also shown here. So this would be extraordinarily low interest rates, historically low, as you can see. Then as inflation started to take off and as the Fed started to tighten monetary policy, interest rates went up through 2022 into 2023. Finally, in 2024, we started to get a little easing and also inflation rate started to come back down. There started to be some expectation that inflation would get under control and Fed would continue to reduce rates that you probably see about at this time frame. And now it's really a question of, will the Fed continue to ease and is inflation truly under control? Most recently, there was a strong jobs market number. So that has kind of tempered expectations that the Fed will continue to ease as much as it was expected in 2025. So you can again kind of see the rates going up just a touch there. But bottom line, from a historical perspective, rates are low. Now looking at the district's outstanding debt, let me just walk through, I guess, what these columns are representing. So for each issue, we show the amount outstanding. If the bonds are callable, how much of those bonds could be called, meaning at the district's option, how much could you pay off, either in part or in whole, on or after the call date. So the 2013 bonds are callable. They've passed their call date, but the call remains with the district. So it wasn't that you had to do something on that date. It was just the earliest date you could do it. Those bonds will remain outstanding and the call option will remain with the district until either they're called or until maturity of the bonds. So again, a little over 3 million outstanding, all of it callable, final maturity in 2032, and the interest rate on these bonds are 4%. And again, you can see just stepping down, same sort of information for each of your issues. The most recent publicly issued bonds are your 2021 bonds. And typical is a 10-year call. So after those were issued, they could be refinanced or paid off starting in 2030 for this series 2021A. Chart below shows just the debt service payments. So that would be principal and the interest payments annually. Now looking specifically at the financing plan for the 2025 bonds, as I mentioned, $65 million for your projects, fund the reserve account. The debt itself is structured, so this light red is structured with level debt service. So if we took away the outstanding debt, you would see these bars basically equal payments each and every year. So they go out to 2044, so about a 20-year term on these bonds. Current all in, so like an APR in a home, all in interest cost is around 4.6%. And that is looking at the current market and assuming that we issue all private activity bonds. Again, the other component potentially is a refunding, which would refund the 2013 bonds, which are the orange bonds shown here. As I mentioned, only if a 3% savings is achieved. Based on current market interest rates, we are not achieving a 3% savings. We are below 2% savings. So if this were to hold when we come to pricing the bonds, these bonds would not be refinanced. They would not be included in the funding, and they would simply remain outstanding. And finally, on schedule, so again, we're here today. We just had the TEFRA hearing, and for you to consider the bond resolution. Next week, staff, along with us, will have a call with Moody's ratings analysts. About a week and a half or so after we have a call with Moody's, we expect to receive the bond rating. With the bond rating, we will have what we need then, along with the approval of the bond resolution, to proceed with then issuing a preliminary official statement to investors. So that's the document that they will review to see everything about the financing and information about the district. So it's basically like a prospectus. About a week after that official statement is out to investors for their review, we then sell the bonds. So that on that morning is when investors will come together with the underwriting firm that we have, and that's Piper Sandler. And investors will provide orders to purchase the district's bonds, and interest rates then would be set on that date. And then typically about 2 weeks after a bond sale is closing. So there will be a number of documents that have to be signed and finalized. But then by the end of February, we're looking to close these bonds and have the funds available to the district. And I think with that, I've hit the end of my presentation, so I will pause.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
I'll open this up for questions from the commission.
Do you want to have comments from the public?
I think that we can, I don't think there's, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, I'm wondering about timing with the bond issue. And do you, in your line of work, do you try to wait for the right timing when you're going to get, or is that a fool's errand, or you just do it when you do it? And
yeah, I mean, as you may have guessed, if I were able to do that, I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting. So no, I think going back to the financing goals of, providing the funding when you need it, and also trying to achieve the lowest cost that we can, in the timing that's presented to us. We aren't trying to necessarily time the market because we just don't know what's going to happen. If we look back to the graph, one might have said, well, look, rates are low, maybe they'll go lower. So maybe I'll wait 3 months to do something. And, the market turns around and goes up. So again, if for some reason something happened on the day of pricing, or, if we're not meeting your goals, if we're not providing the debt service level that you need, then absolutely, we can delay a sale. But again, I wouldn't be doing it based on speculating where the market may be going.
So if I may, when I look at this graph, Scott, what I see is with the exception of what I'll call the COVID crater, the rates that we've got are fairly near historic lows. In other words, this is not a bad time to refinance. Just compared to the COVID crater, it doesn't look so wonderful. If you look at long term, it's actually, in general, a really good time to finance right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That, as I mentioned, these are historical lows. I mean, obviously the pandemic years do stand out. Those are historical lows. And hopefully we wouldn't return to that for those reasons. But yes, I mean, rates have basically come back to where they were pre-pandemic.
So, you all probably know that the scope of our project is larger than this one bond issue. And it's likely that there will be subsequent bond issues needed. I mean, we expect that there would be. So how do you advise us about how to break the bond issues into chunks?
Again, if I may.
Well, there's,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, in the bonds, there's an obligation for us to expend the funds in a certain period of time. And so what we've tried to do is line up the timing of the tranches with what we expect to be the expenditures on the project over a 2 to 3 year period. So we think that it's going to be roughly 55 million over the next 24 to 36 months. At the end of that, we'll need another tranche. And, all this is based on, we've got some significant engineering done, but we don't know what's going to happen with the price of pipe because of tariffs and pumps, and the labor market is in flux right now with people pulling projects off. So we're not sure what the exact spend is going to be, but that's how we've tried to time it.
For example, I would assume that we might have some opportunities around all of that, let's say we're in a clear increasing trend in the bond market, we might go to finance a little earlier rather than later. Is that the kind of thing too that we might consider?
Maybe to a small extent, but if we haven't expended the previous tranche, then you really do need to expend the tranche before you get a new tranche. So it's all going to depend on the timing of the actual cash flows when we get into the project, which, we forecast it, it's fairly lumpy, and it's dependent on a lot of things in the labor and materials markets that are at least as volatile as what's in the interest market. And I'm not good enough to call, whether it's going to go up or down next 2 to 3 months. We just don't know.
And how many tranches do we plan?
Well, it's either 2 or 3, and we anticipate the third would be relatively smaller than the first 2.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
So if I understand correctly, there's this $50 to $55 million initial estimate for the first 3 years, and we're bonding for $65 million in excess of that to have a little wiggle room. But given that we have to expend that in the first tranche before the subsequent ones, hence why not wanting to go for a even larger figure, given we know that the cost will largely be greater?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, it's not just for the capital project. It also covers the underwriting fees, the reserve accounts, and things like that. So it's not just for the spend. It covers more. The second thing is that you only have a certain amount of cap that's available each year from the state to issue limited tax general obligation bonds. And they typically only issue it in $55 to $65 million tranches. And that's all you can get. So above that, you have to go with private purpose bonds, just regular non-tax exempt bonds. And they're much more expensive. So in theory, we could, but then the other part is, even if you went with a large, you finance the whole thing up front, the covenants of the bonds would require us to spend that faster than we could get the thing built. So, it's both those things that cause us to look at setting up tranches. I'm sorry, Cynthia, I probably jumped in on you and Scott on that.
Okay. In the ordinary course of things, you would generally finance only those expenditures that you expect to actually make over a estimated 3-year period. And that really has to do with, why go out and borrow a whole lot of money and have to pay interest expense on that money when you're just sitting there and investing it. And so there's not, unless you're borrowing on a taxable basis, there's not generally a big, what I call arbitrage play, that, okay, I can borrow at 5%, but I'm going to go out and invest at 7%. And so so there is a cost of borrowing. So you have to take that into account and think about what makes sense to actually borrow for estimated needs. Now, if something happens and you can't spend the money, some sort of a disaster that stuff, it's not like you're in trouble or anything if you can't spend the money, but you normally would only borrow that which you reasonably expect that you will be able to spend in 3 years. And keeping in mind, going out to the bond market it costs some money to get into the bond market and all the rest of that too. So you don't want to just be going to the bond market every 3 months or every 4 months, normally speaking. And so this is just kind of a natural time test for what you might expect your contracts to come in and your cash needs to be. And you don't want to go out and take contracts for projects when you don't have the funds available to actually do them. So again, it's not like there's some magic there, but I know the staff has spent quite a bit of time studying sort of what your reasonable expectations are going to be and the timing of your need for funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question.
Go ahead.
So, we're in a world where capital costs are, over the last several years became far less predictable. Yeah, it's possible that will continue. Maybe things will get dramatically cheaper. Not that like, but why I'm asking is that, so one of the things I wonder about is, in the private investment world, when you ask for money and you don't use what or if you don't get done what you want with the money you have, it affects your ability to get money in the future. And I'm wondering to what degree with this kind of financing does things that are beyond our control in terms of capital costs impact us as an organization and our rateability and things like that.
Do you want to
Well,
take that?
I guess-
Scott? Do you want me-
Yeah, I was
Scott,
just
go
going to
ahead.
say, I think it depends on how much those increase and how much you'll need to bond for. I mean, it's hard to say how much, beyond what you're predicting based on, typical inflation, if that were to go, out of control and expenses were much higher and you had to bond for much higher, then, that I suppose could start to impact your bond rating because, of course, the more debt you have outstanding, that'll be something the rating agencies will look at. But it's hard to, I guess, say, without an order of magnitude, what could happen and how that might affect your borrowing ability. Of course, a lot of folks did go out for borrowing, these past several years while inflation was going up. And, there were a lot of challenges of folks, thinking that they had borrowed enough and inflation getting away from them and needing some additional funds. And, perhaps they did that just from their own reserves. But it can be a concern for sure. But I think it'll be a little bit on your staff to monitor those costs and, make changes where and if they can, and if they can't, and you need to bond for that full project amount, then again we'll look at it at that time and advise you the best we can.
Yeah, thank you.
One other thing to think about, Commissioner, the bond rating itself is at a point in time. It's a snapshot. And so once we're done at the end of February and everything's locked in, it is what it is. And then we'll have to go back on the next tranche and do that again and get another bond rating. And because it'll be new rating on the bonds, and the rating agencies are not unreasonable. They look at how you've performed with your existing stuff, how that looked vis-a-vis other organizations that are similarly situated. And, you know, if you've been responsible and advocating what you've done, that reflects well in the ratings overall, you know, all other things being equal. So it's kind of yeah, I hear you. I guarantee this is what gives Annette and I sleepless nights. And, you know, our obligation, our dedication is to do the very best for the district.
Go ahead.
And on that note, I understand that, we're going for an LTGO, as in we could get a better interest rate than a revenue bond, but our intent here is not to impose taxes as our, you know, as our plan A, but
That is absolutely
Yeah.
correct.
because I would, of course, like to, you know, be able to assure the people of Whatcom County that we are confident that we will not be imposing a tax on, you know, an already tax burdened communities.
You know, I think that is a fair way to put it. I can't guarantee anything, but we are confident that we can rate base this project over time with financing, and that it will be covered by the customers who directly benefit from it, not being covered by the community as a whole.
Right, and so while we do retain the option to do that if so needed, to repay the bondholders or to repay this debt, there's that's we can say that's an unlikely scenario, granted, you know, one never knows. But and granted that we're going this route as a way to get the best overall, the best deal and expend dollars most efficiently, right?
I think that's a fair characterization, yes.
Yeah, I would just say that our customers agreed to these rate changes, knowing that we were going to have this bond, really. So, and we've already, like you had mentioned earlier, this was all included in the capital budget that we had discussed. You weren't, obviously you weren't here during that time, but, the only thing, and I think it should be addressed because people talk about it, is what happens if, you know, one of these businesses close? You know, that would be the ultimate bad, but I think this is a 20-year bond.
Yeah, well, so first of all, the two main businesses show no signs of closing.
That's right.
So when you think about what would be required to close facilities of those size and complexities, it's not something you do overnight. They have to maintain, even if they're not using water for the process, they have to maintain access to the water for firefighting and cleanup requirements.
Just as Alcoa is still
Just as
doing.
Alcoa is doing. So you're gonna have the capital recovery piece even during shutdown. So when you look out, and again, this is a tail event. This is a low probability, we consider very low likelihood outcome. But if one of those customers should decide to shut down or idle the facility, it's probably out beyond 10 years. There's probably a 5 or longer year period of kind of shutdown and remediation and all that kind of stuff. And you're pretty much at the end of the 20 years at that point. So, you know, we think that we've got this fairly well covered, and that it, you know, going and resorting to taxation to cover these bonds is a very low likelihood event.
Okay.
I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this and having the experts from the bond community. There's some questions now that we're starting to get into that go beyond what our guests are here to help us with. So if it's appropriate now, I'd like to go into some of those questions.
Go ahead.
But I also want to respect the time of the people that are online.
Well, I think we have until 9:30.
You have until 9:30. We have a hard stop with Cynthia at 9:30.
So one of the things that I'm hopeful for is whenever we do things like this and we have a public hearing is to really have public comment. And unfortunately I hadn't gotten wind of this hearing until Wednesday. I don't know, when did the other commissioners, when did the two of you hear about this hearing?
Well, I knew this hearing was coming.
Yeah, I knew it was coming.
Yeah,
When did we know that this was scheduled for today?
last week,
On Wednesday, right? And we got the
maybe
packet.
Tuesday or Wednesday, yeah.
It was Wednesday, Joseph, when you sent the packet?
Yes.
So, there was apparently a notice sent out for the bond hearing. When was the notice for the bond hearing sent out?
That would have been a week ago today.
Tuesday.
Posted, yeah. It was posted on the website, posted on the website.
It's 7 days is required for the temp.
7 days is what is required, and that's because of federal tax law that requires this public hearing. But of course, your meetings are all public and your agendas are out there. And even if this weren't required by federal tax law to have this particular hearing, you certainly are fully capable of taking all comments, written and including those from the people either attending in person or online, to actually take overall comments on this. And so it is, you can expand and frankly, just make sure you feel comfortable as well as you feel your constituents are comfortable. I want to emphasize one thing, that this is not entirely unusual to actually use a limited tax general obligation pledge. And it's usually, and in this case, done because it gives you access to lower interest rates. But as we have said in prior meetings with the underwriting team, there is absolutely no one on this underwriting team or anywhere who actually expects you to be levying these taxes. You have not levied taxes for almost 70 years, I think. So you have it would be highly unusual. It would be some extraordinary circumstances. And so although it is structured as if you have the legal authority to levy those taxes, but it would take real interesting circumstances, including your own will to levy those taxes, that if need be. So I want to make sure that no one in the room or even in the investing community is actually expecting you to be levying any of these taxes. While the mechanism is there, it is definitely not expected. It would be extraordinary circumstances for you to do so after a almost 70-year period of not levying any taxes. And it's very unusual for a public utility district to levy taxes in any event, quite frankly. So although we talk about it, we should not think about it as if it's a realistic probability for these commissioners to be imposing that tax.
Thank you for that. I would agree completely. It doesn't seem like a realistic, it's, but as you know, you plan for everything.
Yeah.
So, the public input isn't really about expecting the public to be able to identify something that perhaps this commission or staff haven't identified. I mean, you don't know, but it's a more of a process concern. And so after Chris and I had our check-in yesterday, I called Todd, former Commissioner Legacy, Mr. Legacy, and I don't know if that helped precipitate your attendance today or not, but very much appreciate that. And I did speak to some other people in the community, and they expressed a willingness to make comment, but it just was too short notice for them to attend and make comment. I would like the commission to hear their thoughts and comments if that's possible. So that's just as far as process, I would like us to, it's a big thing. I think it's a $78 million here. Not to exceed 70, even though we're actually planning on not going for $78 million, right? It's more like 55, right? Or 60.
I think 62 was the latest number I saw, 62.8.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, the point is that it's it's still a lot of $1 million. So I
I understand your scheduling concerns. You know, as far as not giving further notice and, you know, like I said, you have to have at least 7. I knew that this was coming, you know, that it would probably be this meeting or the next meeting that we would have it, but I imagine there's some scheduling issues involved too, right?
Yeah, and I'd
Getting
like to
the
get-
people present and, you know.
I'd like to help in the process of, because, you know, I mean, since I became a commissioner, a little over 6 years ago. And every commissioner that's been elected, you know, we've all talked about, hey, how do we improve our public engagement? And it's just for the public to see that, hey, we're trying to reach out and engage them. It's not gonna happen overnight. But this is something to be proud of, this step. I mean, all the work we've been through and to expose this to the public, that, you know, the amount of consideration and thought that went into this whole process. And I think that all these things are great opportunities to demonstrate that, you know, we're the PUD is becoming more public facing. That's one, in the past, I have made the statement that when we notice on a hearing, it'd be great if the commission got notice a little bit ahead of time, so that we could be an ally in bringing more public comment to the meeting, so that yeah, so we can, you know, I mean, the commission has this long-term goal of improving its relationship with the community, and this is a great opportunity to pursue that. So I've thought about that, and that is that make the postpone the final approval till our next meeting. But before I go into that, I also want to bring up a second item of questions, and that's really for John. And that's, we have a customer, of course, as we've gone through the whole process of them becoming an uncustomer, and that's in Taco. One of the things I'm curious about, this point of the capital allocation portion, was Intalco paying up through the last day of their service contract?
They're still
Capital-
paying.
Oh, they're still, they're still paying a capital allocation?
I think so, because, and Eddie Chris would know more than I, but their contract, they're still taking water, so they're still subject to the contract. They wouldn't have the right to access water for their cleanup and all the other work that's going on out there.
So like,
Potable and
I
whatever.
mean, practically their water is extremely expensive, because they're paying a huge capital allocation for a lot more gallons than they actually use.
Yeah, they pay a fixed capital fee, and then they pay a volumetric fee for the water they take. The amount of water they take has gone down sharply, but Intalco wants to preserve the ability for that parcel to draw the same amount of water, and they've chosen
yeah.
to continue to pay the capital, and I think, you know, in terms of marketing.
If they stop the capital paying the fixed charge, they terminate the contract and they would have no right to water on that property.
Right.
And they'd have to come back and
Reestablish
establish
service.
service.
Yeah, no, that's.
You're the designated purveyor, so you would be obligated to consider.
So, I mean, as a commission, I mean, it's interesting for me to recognize that, there already are some elements of what I would call, as a layperson on this subject, take or pay aspect, because the capital portion is fixed, regardless of the volume that they take. So, one of the things I'd ask, in our budgetary process is, how do we intend to evolve our contract approach going forward? Is it necessary from your all's thinking? And to, you know, further mitigate risk is what I'm really getting down to, the potential low likelihood tax risk. Are there things that need to be done with our contract structure?
So they have a contract, I think, and Brian or Kurt can remind me, it's 2028, maybe a little bit later.
One of them's 28, the other one's 30.
Yeah, and so we've started the process without great sense of urgency, because it's 4 or 5 or 3 years off now, 4 years, to start revising those contracts. There are terms for special conditions. If they just shut down.
I would just, since we're talking about a potential contract and negotiations, that we move any of this further discussion in detail to executive session.
I can say, I think safely, that we can look at other provisions for beefing up a stranded cost concept, but that's something we considered.
I'm comfortable with, okay, I'm comfortable with that answer.
Okay.
I don't want to get into too much detail that requires us to.
You know, and we share your concern and we're trying to mitigate that from the other end as well.
I'm a little bit processing it as you're talking, and one of the things that is occurring to me is that, you know, that there's very compelling reasons for, in our world that we live in today, for a water customer to want to keep the availability of water online. And, you know, we're in a good positions strategically as a municipal water purveyor to provide a greater assurance of water supply. And so it's just occurring to me, and I probably won't talk too much about
To
it.
that end, I'll just say,
Yeah.
it's in our interest to maintain those water contracts.
Mhm.
From a consumption perspective in light of it's not any great secret in light of the pending adjudication.
Oh, really? This is adjudication?
So,
Yeah.
you know, and that we are actively and not, you know, having, we continue to have wet water demand.
Well, and we do also, back on the capital side of things, we want to make sure as Cherry Point continues to develop, perhaps as an energy hub, that when these high water intensity companies get built out there, that we have the ability to serve them and then, attract them here and get the jobs and everything else that goes with that. So not just the existing customers, but there's good reasons to want to rebuild plant one and reinforce the piping and make sure that we can deliver large quantities of water out to Cherry Point.
So, yeah, I mean, some of the underlying premises that would give investors confidence here point to some, some bigger questions around, can we expect with confidence that, our customers are gonna be operating 20 years or more from now? Or in some form or another, demanding that water and paying that revenue. And, I think we can all recognize that there is a lot of uncertainty in the world in this region today, and the future of fuels and energy supply, and the important role that these refineries play is likely to evolve and look different 20 years from now than it is today. And there might be lots of there's plenty of different predictions and speculation about that. I would point to, there's a newly published study that was commissioned by the state legislature, conducted by Western Washington University College of Business and Economics, that's being reported this month, that essentially looks at the economic futures of Northwest oil refineries, laying out a number of different scenarios of the way things could go, and continuing existing operations or shifting to new products or other sorts of operations. And they found it to be highly likely and presumable that these refineries will continue to be in operation more than 20 years from now. So if we were predicating this bond on the Intalco aluminum smelter continuing as a customer, say 5 years ago, even at that time, I would not have thought that it would be responsible to make that assumption, given their long history of curtailment and economic challenges. But I think we can safely say that these refineries are profitable, and they are continuing to make major investments in upgrading their operations. I've seen a number of projects just in the last couple of years come through both refineries, and of course now we have new projects underway, even at the former Intalco site that's under cleanup, right? So I think we can be assured that one way or another, that despite there being some uncertainty around what their operations will look like, there will be a need for that water one way or the other. And I would also just add that I had the opportunity to tour water treatment plant last month and saw firsthand, and I think better understand now, the necessity of going through this and replacing that plant with a new, more efficient, modern, and reliable facility and safe facility, for our workers, for our customers, for everyone. We owe that to them, and this seems like the right time to do this. And if we waited or draw this out, who knows what might happen with the bond market. This is a good time financially to go for it, and it's the right time in terms of, the time span of 20 years ahead where we could say we can say with some assurance what things will look like. I wouldn't want to hold this up any further. However, I mean, granted, the timeline was shown, this is going to be a process of a couple of months. Granted that it's a major step to adopt this resolution and move forward. Can we clarify if there's any other final steps what other final steps of approval there would be beyond this for the bond sale?
So this resolution delegates the authority to actually authorize the sale to me. So there's no further action required from the commission, in my understanding.
Correct.
Well, I would, just to continue if I may, just would say I do agree with Commissioner Deshmani that I would like to see us go above and beyond the minimum requirement as far as, advertising public notice and inviting input from folks in the community and whoever might have expertise in this area that we might or might not know of. Would welcome that input, and I do regret if, just for sake of timing and short notice, we missed something. And so I guess I would like your further opinions on what the impact would be, maybe from our financial advisors, on delaying this vote a couple more weeks.
I think if this is say moved to your next meeting, I think which would be the 28th, and it were approved on that date, between now and then, I think we would still proceed with our rating call with Moody's Investor Service. So we would at least have that out of the way. Now that would potentially incur some costs, meaning if for some reason this financing didn't happen, then we would owe some money to Moody's. But again, to me, it sounds like that's still a prudent way to go to move that forward. So we would have the call with Moody's. On our schedule, it looks like we're asking for the rating to come back after your meeting, then on the 28th. So in that case, again, if for some reason it didn't get approved on that date and we needed to look at a further reschedule, we could ask Moody's to delay getting us the rating back. And then I think at that point, the schedule that I showed to you would likely start to shift out. Again, depending on then when we think the actual approval of the resolution would be. So I think bottom line, moving it to your next meeting, I don't see a large impact to the schedule. Beyond your next meeting, then I think that it would start to move out then probably a corresponding number of weeks from the approval.
Okay.
I want to weigh in on something. So, I agree that the time is now. I don't see probably a huge change. You have a pretty tight timeline. I hear you that it's not going to change, but I just want to say to the commission, I think there's some barriers to public comment that have nothing to do with noticing or the time that this was noticed. I mean, I think a lot of people would want to attend these super sexy commission meetings if they weren't at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers to public comment. And I know that from constituents that I have spoken to about coming to public comment. They're like, I'm working on a Tuesday, I can't get away on a Tuesday morning. So, and I think that that's something that we can talk about to a greater extent down the road. So, I mean, if you guys, it looks like the timeline, if we do it in 2 weeks from now, it's not going to affect the processes. But I'm ready. So I just want to put I'm ready.
And I also feel ready. I'm just trying to take advantage of opportunities, and you're right, our timing, and it's been a long conversation and it needs to continue. So I very much just see this as another opportunity to get, and I specifically spoke to a few people that committed to me that they would be able to come for our next meeting, but just like one of them, like for example, Robin loves talking about finance. He's on a plane to Hawaii, darn him.
Yeah.
So how dare he get on a plane to go to Hawaii, instead of our commission meeting? I mean, I know he's retired, but why not, just attend our meeting instead? Sorry, Chris.
Oh, no, I just want a couple observations. You know, one is, you send a message to the rating agency by approving this now, that you're behind this and you believe in it. It doesn't sound like, you're gonna get any information in the next couple of weeks that's gonna make any difference to that. Although, you know, clearly, I understand the desire to have public input on this. So I guess one thing that you could potentially do is approve this today and continue to take comments on the thing and see what's out there. And, you know, staff is responsive to what you want to do in the long term. The issue then would be that we would be proceeding with a clear slate with the bond rating agency, and it's not a question that they might have potentially, or gosh, are your commissioners really behind this? So that's on the one. To address the other issue, the evening issue, the last place I was general manager for 5 years, we held our meetings 6:15 to 8:15 was published, and occasionally they went a little longer, but in the evening, on Wednesday evenings. And we have more public attendance here than we had there. So it's just one of those things where, you know, to your point, Commissioner Arnett, this is people trust their elected officials and their staff support in utilities to exercise due diligence and be useful and boring and, you know, do all the right things. And they just tend not to worry about it very much. So it's hard to draw them in, even when you're doing profound things like shutting down a coal plant. We didn't have a single public entity or person show up, other than, well, that's not true. We had Arch Coal showed up and they wanted us to not shut down the plant because they want to sell us coal. But you know, people just didn't, they trusted you to just do it. And I'm fine with having meetings in the evenings, whatever you guys want. I'm just pointing out, don't have this expectation that you're gonna have this massive, you may have some people show up first time because it's kind of novel. But over time, you're gonna get about the same attendance that you've got here.
Well, to be fair, so was it City Council, Bellingham City Council that moved maybe it was the county, they moved their meetings from daytime to nighttime to increase public comment, and it worked. So I think that we just have maybe a more engaged constituency. People love public comment in Whatcom County.
So,
yeah.
just last fall, when we delivered on 2117,
Mhm.
the initial notices for the first meeting got to some people,
Mhm.
but it was so great that we waited for the second meeting, because we got a much richer range of input and really allowed us to cement.
But no, we were inviting comment on something that was outside of the district.
That's right.
We were endorsing something that was a hot button item, and that drew all kinds of comments. Us running the utility responsibly and making sure that we have continuity of service, it's not sexy,
And I would just.
but it's expected.
But I'll just to finish my point though, the difference was that after the first meeting, and that's when I brought up this point about if commission could be constructively engaged to help bring people to the meeting. And so I'm also taking on this personally, and I think we all would be happy to take on this personal responsibility as it relates to public comment of getting the notice a little bit in advance, and so that we can reach out to people, send emails, make phone calls, and so on and so forth to get people to show up, whatever time. And obviously different times will have different pluses and minuses. There is a benefit in commissioner engagement and getting public comment, no matter what the subject is. That's all I'm just saying.
We can change our process so that anytime we want to do something like this, we announce it in the prior meeting and give you guys.
That would be
opportunity.
great. That's a great process improvement.
Now, that being said, I'm not gonna say there isn't gonna be some short time turnaround emergency kind of thing.
No,
that
I
may fall
understand
into
that. I understand, but hearings are almost never short time type of things, so.
I did have one comment on this. I was Paul, passed me a note, and the hearing was posted to the website on January 3rd. So it was a little bit earlier than we actually had to have it posted. And then the other comment I just had to say was, this isn't a new project. I mean, we've been talking about this for years, and we did pretty extensive through the budget, talking about how we're going to finance it, what it's going to cost. I mean, and those costs have changed, but I mean, the bulk of it, we knew it was going to be a very expensive when we were going out for bonds. So I understand your want to get public involvement, but it seems like there's been a significant amount of time where if somebody had a comment, that it could have been made.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in agreeing that, you know, and of course recognizing all the great amount of work that's been done to date. And I do have much trust in the judgment and decision-making of everyone on the team that worked on this. I don't believe this resolution, though, was available for the public to see in its final form until less than 2 weeks ago. So granted, while the topic has been out in public, the final form of exactly what we're approving to move forward has not. And I don't expect that we're gonna hear some substantive public comments that are gonna change the course of our decision. I think it should be well understood that all of us plan to vote to move forward with this and very much wish to. Purely on principle, I would support delaying the vote just to allow everyone to better digest, because you never know, more eyes on something, what you might catch. I know we only have a few minutes left with our guests here, and I would like to ask one more question of them. But if it's been clarified that withholding today doesn't stop the ratings call from happening, and that voting in 2 weeks would still allow us to move forward with the planned timeline, then if a motion was made, I would support holding this for 2 more weeks, while also very much intending to vote for it.
Let me ask Scott and Cynthia, do you need an authorization to proceed with the ratings with Moody's? If the motion is for the resolution as entirety is put on hold or tabled for 2 weeks?
No, I think the indications we've gotten from staff and from the commission are sufficient for us to move forward with the rating call.
I'll go and make that motion.
I'll
Go make your motion to what it is.
I just said I'd like us to, since we have like 7 more minutes left with them, could we continue discussion of this for a couple more before we find it?
I do want to say that I would be ready to go with this, and I think that there's some significant things that are happening between now and January 28th that, Scott, you said that you don't believe that there could be a significant change in the rates by the time that we get to this, and you stand by that?
No, I didn't make any comment on the rates.
Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen on rates. What I did say was, based on shifting to the 28th, I don't believe that there'll be a shift in the schedule.
Oh, there won't be a shift in the schedule, but rates could change significantly in the next.
But that would happen no matter what.
It's the same timeline for a rate, Moody's.
Yeah, the issue is the close date. It's
Right.
what the rates are on that day, and nobody knows what that's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, things.
And so we're on schedule. If I say yes today or I say yes on the 28th, it doesn't change anything.
I believe we'll be able to maintain the sale date if it's the 28th. If it's any point after that, then I assume the sale date will shift.
And then
Outward.
we gotta really start worrying about how we time the project itself, because, we've got RFPs that are already out. We're looking at awarding bids later on this year, and it becomes a cash flow issue. So we have to begin delaying. It's not just the bond sale that gets delayed, it's everything else in the project.
Only if we went further. No, really, right?
Right.
Yeah. As long as all of us can be here on the 28th, and
Yeah.
We need to be able to vote by the 28th.
So the reason why we want to delay it to the 28th is because we believe that there's going to be more people that are gonna show up and say something. Or are we just posturing to say, you know what, I think that we should, allow more time for the public to come make comments. Like, do you know what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I'm
It's
expecting that people are-
frustrating to me because we've opened things up for public comment multiple times. It's not going to change how we vote on this. To me, it feels very performative to be like, let's go ahead and wait, because maybe, Tom, Dick, or Harry wants to weigh in on this. That's performative. That is we're already ready to vote on this. So what you're talking about is literally having a performance. And you know it, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So,
contest
I don't know why we would do that. I don't, it's not gonna change how I vote. And I'm willing to, be the one that, is the nay vote on this and says that we should move forward, but, that's how I feel.
Well, and if I may just weigh in on one other thing, and this is what Chris brought up. Again, I think we'll be able to convey to the rating agency, the commission's backing. However, really there will be no better alternative than actually having it adopted that we can present to the rating agency. Again, we'll present, as we've heard, that the PUD is backing the project and the commission is behind it, and may be looking for public comment. However, again, nothing would beat actually providing them with an approved copy.
If we want to perform, I'll be your circus monkey.
May I, President, may I ask one more question? Unrelated to the timing of our decision. Could we clarify also, and for the benefit of the public, some of the different number figures that appear in the resolution? Because in the title, it says 78.2 million. In the body, it says 75 million. And I believe that was in the public notice. And then we're also throwing out, we've named 65 million figure. Can we clarify what these numbers mean?
Sure. Or Cynthia, would you like to do that?
Essentially the new money piece is not expected to be more than the $75 million number. But we are potentially taking into account the fact that we will have a potential refunding in there. And that is basically sort of how we're getting up that extra 3 million and then the overall cost of issuance. And so it had to do with where the buckets of money were going to end up. So overall, we in the end wanted to have a resolution with a number that was high enough to take into account all potential circumstances to get us to where we wanted to go, including a potential taxable piece, as well as the refunding piece and how much money was going for the new money. And so essentially, when we were talking about the overall TEFRA hearing, that was really only dealing with the private activity bond piece of this. And so that was it. So we have a pretty flexible resolution taking into account the fact that we could have multiple series of bonds, but overall taking in that number was the high number, the 78.2. But we expect it will be something less than that. And certainly if there's no refunding because there are no savings or not sufficient savings, that will drop down lower. So that was where the differential is in the numbers.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and typically, when a client asks us for proceeds, they tell us what the net project deposit they want. So that's the 65 million. But we then add to that the bond issuance costs, and in this case, a reserve account. So all of that would be additive and moving us toward 75 million. However, based on current market, there's no indication that we would be issuing a principal amount of 75 million. Based on current market, we're well below that. So as Cynthia said, it's some headroom to allow for potential market changes, but also to add in some of those other costs, which are not part of the $65 million.
Thank you very much for clarifying that.
And it looks like we're about out of time for Cynthia and Scott. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I think Cynthia had the hard stop. I don't know if Scott did.
Yeah, I can stay.
Stop.
Happy to stay.
I'm the one who had the hard stop.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Very helpful.
By the way, you don't have to, you could adopt the bond resolution without me standing by to see you adopt the bond resolution. So I'm not trying to predict what your ultimate action is going to be for today. And if you think you wanted me to stay for 2 or 3 more minutes, I could probably still fit that in, but I'm not trying to cut you off or do anything, but this may be just going to go to a postponement. So I don't want to.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think we need you for any more time. You're free to go.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Did we want to open this up for some public? I know you had expressed interest in having some public comment.
I think it would be great.
Yeah.
Our one comment there.
Todd, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. Todd Legacy again, here as a private citizen. One, when it comes to notices on public hearings like this, it seems that maybe there was a little bit of a disconnect, and that if it was posted on the website on January 3rd, it seems that as soon as that is posted, or when you know it's going to be posted, all 3 of the commissioners at the very least should be called, texted, emailed. Hey, we're putting something on our website that is public notice.
Mhm.
And that seems to be something that should be incorporated into a policy or a procedure of notice to the commissioners that, hey, this is being done. And that also impacts or informs the commission's desire to be more public facing, right? That is something that was incorporated into Ms. Muller's job description, I believe, correct? So to have that public information component, and I'm not saying you didn't notice it, I'm saying moving forward, this is an opportunity. As far as other opportunities go, I think that this bond hearing could have been a better opportunity for public education. We had a great presentation on bonds that is not in the packet. I hope that does get incorporated into the public record or for future reference. But I think, we've spent, I say we, when I was on the commission, I was very fortunate. I appreciate the opportunity. We had some education opportunities there, even with the in-house. And I think we missed one here about an education component of bonds and even trying to bring the general public in, maybe try to make that a evening opportunity. That one's missed. In the future, I think trying to do that is worthwhile, because the more people know about their government financing, the less misinformation can run rampant. And then lastly, I just wanted to point out the county passed a children's levy of about 10 million bucks a year. And in the first year, they only spent about 37,000. And in the second year, they only spent through quarter 3, they reported about spending about 200K rough. And so they built up a large reserve. And I know Chris has said, General Manager Heimgartner has said that moving forward, they already have some RFPs out. I guess my question would have been, is there any value in building up some reserve from the increased rates before seeking the funding or going out to fund the bonds? Would that help with a better Moody's rating or anything along those lines? So thank you for the opportunity.
The children specifically, they were not able to spend that money because they had to put out RFPs to spend the money, correct? Like they didn't have anything that they were planning to spend the money on.
So there's a lot of different talk back and forth,
Yeah.
but what I want to concentrate on is the fact that they have approximately $20 million that's earning interest. But so there's a funding mechanism that comes from that large reserve. So is there an opportunity there? That's the only for the PUD to have, the longer you wait, how much money are you building up per month in a reserve that then earns interest?
Oh, so you're talking about delaying the bond.
That's a question, not an invite, just a question of strategy.
Gotcha.
Play the arbitrage game with reserves.
Right,
basically.
yeah.
But don't forget, we have a plant that we could spend all of those reserves on emergency repairs.
Exactly. Yeah, it's falling apart as
So,
we speak.
it's
Yeah.
really we're past time to begin the project already, and that's my biggest concern.
Right, it's an emergent need, unfortunately, yeah.
I did have a question for Scott. If you would please, sir, email your presentation to Annette so she can get it to me and I will put it in our final agenda packet that we post. I try to, any presentations that come in at the commission meeting, they get turned in to a
the final,
PDF
okay.
and made part of that.
Joseph, it's in your inbox already.
Cool. Then we'll make it part of the final that we post online after every meeting so that the public does have access to all materials you guys have access to.
Great. Scott, did you want to weigh in on that?
I guess the only thing I was going to say, I mean, are reserves helpful? Yes, but I guess to the extent that the reserves would be expected to be spent, I think that's, the rating agency would take into account that you've built up reserves to spend those down. So I think they would then be looking at, where do they think your reserves will be going to, not where do they stand when you go to the rating agency.
Go ahead.
Are we expecting a AAA regardless?
No.
What's
AAA would be the top rating. The district's existing bonds are rated AA3. So AA3, I think, would be probably the best. I mean, there's a chance that, again, given the additional debt load over what the district has historically had, that the rating may be lower than a AA3. It'll still be a good rating, but again, AA3 is where you're currently at, which, as I mentioned, is it's 4 notches away from AAA, but an excellent current rating that you have. Yeah, sorry. In Moody's parlance, it's AA or AAA, AA1, AA2, AA3.
And that's consistent with what we've gotten for previous bonds. Right?
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
most recent AA3.
So staff would still ask for a vote on the resolution.
right.
And we would ask that you approve the resolution today. So that is staff's ask.
I'll entertain a motion, either way, so.
So, one other possibility is to have public comment on our capital improvement plan. Now, I just want to also address something that you said, is that I have listened to thousands of public comments in my various capacities and attending as a citizen. And I would say at the PUD, I don't think we've had very, very few public comments that I didn't learn something from. So the public doesn't have the ability to have the depth that the commissioner has in terms of studying the history of any particular road. So I don't listen to public comment to sway me one way or another. It might, but I'm looking to listen to the public. And so how do you do that? You wait for opportunities where something that is significant, like a big chunk of money, is being spent, and it's what helps catalyze that engagement. I'm not expecting that someone from the public is gonna tell me something I've never heard of. It happens, but that's not what the expectation was. So I'm saying the point you made about performative. Anytime someone goes to the trouble of coming here and making comment, I'm listening and I'm excited to hear what they have to say. And I know you weren't saying anything.
No, I mean, I would love to see us engage more with the public. That I think we've talked about that quite a bit. Again, I'll just go back to 8:15 on a Tuesday is not probably the best time for that. I would even be open, you said maybe we can engage the public in our capital, budget. I wrote down here, maybe a bond workshop for education. I think there's other ways, if we're going to continue to have these meetings on Tuesday mornings, that we can engage the public in broader conversations about this, maybe we put out
So how about this? I'd like to make a motion to address all this, and that in the spring, the PUD put forward, so we have two-part motion. Part A is approval of the, bond. And part B is that the commission requests that staff prepare a, public hearing on our capital improvement plan. To be done sometime in the next 6 months. And then the commission gets notice of that a month in advance, so that we can make sure that the public shows up, and we'll figure out the timing of it too. We'll work all the details out. Because we're in the middle of spending a lot of money. We should try to engage the public on how much money we're spending. And before I make that motion, I kind of like to get a head nod from you two.
Can I
What do you
just
think
add
of that as an
one thing?
alternative?
I would make two separate motions. I would isolate the motion to.
I will, I just want to
Okay,
make
I
sure
just,
that,
I'm
yeah.
not.
Yeah, I mean,
procedural.
a public hearing though, like, do you just
Nothing
mean like a
fancy.
town hall, not like a public hearing? 'Cause
Yeah,
that-
I mean,
that's a
you know.
legal.
Oh, no, it's not, I mean, there's a public hearing. We invite the public to, I don't know, what was John,
Well, you're hearing the
You don't know
public
the
for
word.
sure,
Can I
but,
make a suggestion?
Yeah.
yeah.
So one thing that I've seen in the past that's been really effective is you hold, call it a town hall, whatever you wanna call it, but basically. So when you say capital plan, okay, I know you're thinking kind of narrowly about the industrial water system.
Yeah,
But we've got a similar capital proposal for the Grandview system, and then we've got to look at the electric system.
electric system, right.
So I think that, and then potentially a geothermal plant. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so there's a lot of things that we've got going right now. And what we could do is have essentially storyboards set up
Mm-hmm.
and the experts available and just have an open house. And this is what we're all about. And
I would love
invite
that.
people. And then it's not you're not asking for someone to opine on this is a good project or that's a bad project. It's more, here's all the things that we're doing, that it's under the fog line. I mean, we just do stuff. And
What do you think of that, Commissioner Geary? You haven't seen any body language from you.
You don't move yourself around like the Italian in the room.
Yeah,
More coffee in this young man, I tell you.
I'm awake now, thank you. I like that idea, open house, and just exploring more varied ways that we can, make public input more encouraged and accessible. I completely agree with President Arnett that it's not gonna, like, if the meetings are at 8:15 AM on Tuesday, having an additional public hearing doesn't necessarily solve it doesn't, we're not gonna be removing all barriers in any case. Granted, there's not, people can also send us written comments or leave a voicemail or all kinds of other ways that they can provide input. So, I would say, while I'm feeling this sense of urgency here, and granted, I wasn't here for, this is my first reading of this. Well, it's all of our first reading of this resolution. And first discussion of this resolution, not of the topic of the water treatment plant replacement. And from what I've observed in, city and county, other municipal governments, a resolution of this significance of a pretty major amount of money to be, taking out debt on, that the public is liable for, typically is not voted on the very first day of its reading. There's usually multiple meetings and some periods of discussion, because government isn't expected to move super quickly. And I understand that this was published essentially as soon as it was complete and ready. And taking another couple weeks, as long as it does not, if it did not delay the timeline further, I'd support that. However, if it comes to it and there's a vote called on voting for this, I'm gonna vote for it. So, I get just all on that, but if as Commissioner
Well, the
Fish
reason I brought it,
suggested,
splitting it up is I'm trying to be
Right.
sensitive to Commissioner Arnett's
Right.
desire to just get it done today.
right, and I understand that and that we can.
I'm finding a compromise.
You don't wanna make-
Exactly, so I think, and I would, voting for this, I would just like it known that, and I think that's what you're accomplishing with these two motions is, that we would like to make a point in the future of, allowing a little bit more space, in our process and not having the sense of rushing things and, giving folks more of an opportunity.
Okay, so I would like to make my first motion, because I want this motion to pass before so the first motion is by June 30th, 2025. I would like staff to prepare a, open house on our capital improvement plan. For commission, you know, the details of the agenda, the time and all that to be approved by the commission at a later date. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Discussion. No?
Well, there can be future discussion, I believe, on it, if we make this a future agenda item, so.
Okay, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Because my second motion I'd like to make is to approve staff's recommendation for the resolution 1. Resolution number 867. For approving the resolution of the Commission of the Public Utilities District number 1 of Whatcom County. So on, so on.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, Commissioners. I think you'll be delighted with the open house as well.
I was gonna look really cute with my symbols though.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Annette.
you, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bauer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott, and take care.
Yeah,
Can I request we perhaps take a 3-minute recess before proceeding with the rest of the meeting?
Yeah, I could use a 3-minute recess.
oh, okay, sure. Take a 3-minute recess.
I move to take a recess.
Yeah, I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
At what time are we?
10
to 10. 10 to 10.
No, I don't know. I'm back in my. Get it up.
But I don't have
9:46
but
to 9:50.
Oh, I have a flat. I can't. When you. Nobody allowed.
Out first,
Yeah.
we can't tell that.
Like whenever you just.
Oh, that
Out of
happened.
an arm, you explain things that nobody understands.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
is much broader.
Would you like to take
issue
a
with
couple
federal
minutes,
government.
sir,
I
to
don't-
sign your life?
Just call it part of ongoing Native American.
Maybe not.
National political actions against the United States. And wanting to have a position for Secretary of Interior, or move the BIA out of Interior to have.
I read all that.
Yeah.
So this is.
My official thing.
Oh.
Thank you for your service.
What is official?
It was truly.
Because-
So.
I can start to do.
Representing this day, or is this?
It says government.
We actually presented it at a prior.
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
When they blew it down.
Oh, okay.
So this is the frame version.
What is our
You
relationship
can get Eddie to sign.
officially? Oh, the Chinese wars.
Yeah, I think we did it. I think we
You
did.
smart guys, you guys should come up with something.
Apparently you did something when I wasn't here,
Yeah,
so thank you.
yes,
Thank you both.
yeah.
Pleasure.
And thank you, Cheech.
Thank you, Ron.
Want to see a picture of that on your wall?
What is, I
Put
think
it on
it's
Facebook. Yeah.
the conflict question,
It's
I
not a
think.
beauty question.
No, I know that.
But you smart guys, you figured this out.
Well,
I
I
think
think it
it's-
depends,
I'm
it's
still
a
recording.
political, complex political question as well as legal in that. You know, the tribes would say it's sovereign to sovereign.
I just want you to know.
I think, and if I can opine on what the tribes view it, which may not be fair. But they view it as a sovereign to sovereign. And I think a lot of people in local government view it as, well, you're a sister government and we're just government to government. And it's a conceptually a different concept and has a different cultural component to it that doesn't always transcend.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be good if there was some kind of like thing in training of newly electeds. That said, hey, by the way.
But see, that's political because a lot of non-native viewpoints might not consider that a sovereign relationship.
Mhm.
And so that's the tension dynamic within the non-native community.
I need something stronger than tea this
And you
morning.
know what I've done?
Gotta get the coffee.
Better late.
Figure out how to these people off.
Yeah.
That's it. You know what my razor is, oh, I just said that, oh, I didn't mean to piss you off, so I'm not gonna say that again.
You made a mountains run away, is that right?
that?
I said, did you make him mad? And I was running away.
Yeah. No, we're talking about this intergovernmental, relations.
Mm,
It makes his head hurt. I'm thinking of this. I like.
I think see where that would make his head hurt.
Oh, someone's coming.
I make a lot of people's heads hurt. I don't like to ask this question. I know, but
Is
it's kind
this-
of,
Is this different? Is this something different?
no, it's just you're now.
It's
I
just
normally
not-
don't have a beard.
You look very dignified.
I look more dignified.
You really do.
Okay.
I like it.
Hello? It's more of a winter thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Keeps my chin warm.
Okay, class.
I'll just shave my cheek for tango.
Wise idea.
Mhm.
My
No,
son,
it's
my
right.
son's. Knows us all.
From,
Like, what's that?
he's
Anyway,
the
Yeah,
principal. on
Vendetta
the,
guy,
Hauser
Guy Fox.
yeah, we're bringing black.
team, you guys are,
Oh,
Jacob
Jacob's-
Roberts.
Okay. Class is back in session.
My report will be mercifully short.
Great.
I just want to remind the commission, last time we met or the time before, you guys authorized some release of Bonneville Conservation Funds to Mason #3.
Yeah.
I want to pass around a really nice thank you note from Annette Krupon, who is the GM of Mason 3, acknowledging how much we helped them out. And,
Great.
Yeah, it was nice. I got that about a week ago and, thought you guys would want to see it. The only other thing that I have is, next week on Tuesday, LA Resources AltaGas is hosting the next, Community Benefits Advisory Committee, which I'm on, and they were looking for a place to hold it, so I volunteered, we hold it right here, so. Tuesday afternoon, it's not open to the public, it's not a public meeting, but I just wanted you guys to know, they have that here. And I think it's scheduled 3 to 5 or 2:30 to 6:30 or something, it's in the late afternoon. That should be good,
And which date did you say?
that's 21st,
21st of January.
yeah, it says Tuesday, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, just FYI.
Well, I'm happy for them, for us to host here and make use of the facility for that purpose.
And we really want to see the hydrogen hub launch.
Mhm.
This is a little part of helping do that. That's it for my report. Like I said, mercifully short.
Wow, thank you, Chris.
Related to that, I just want to mention that, I, attended some meetings and heard that, the nomination has just secured some funding for, fuel cell power plants. That they might be a potential, customer for.
Do you know if that's part of their municipalization? Is there,
No, it's totally unrelated.
wow,
We've secured funding.
Yeah,
Love to learn more about that.
I know. I've
yeah,
heard about that.
I'm waiting for a meeting with their, utilities guy, who's, in Hawaii too. And, Teresa Taylor, is the one who informed me of that, and I'm planning to follow up with her on that, with their utilities person in the next month or so.
Great.
I'll be glad to report what I learned.
We will move on to old business with a broadband updates.
we skipped over operations, if you want to do it real quick.
Oh, yeah, I
And
guess,
Kurt's got a quick report also.
I guess
Yeah.
Kurt. I tried to skip you.
Yeah, I thought maybe I missed the schedule or something. Good morning again, commissioners. So one of the things we just posted on the website, we're looking for a new project manager. That has just been listed on the website and probably the Herald and a couple other locations. And so that's just started. We have contractors on site here at Plant 2 working on our turbidity vault. They've got a very large excavated hole out there and out by the facility, but they're going to start forming up a vault here this week and work on that. That work is continuing. And apologize for earlier on confusing all my cybersecurity firms that we were working with, because one of the things that we actually have all these software type cybersecurity firms working with us, but we're actually starting to move into a little bit also of doing like physical security assessments. Paul is actually meeting someone over at Plant One on Thursday. So not only have we been working on our software side of our facilities, but also the hardening, the actual, maybe not hardening perimeters, but at this point we're just getting assessments and just seeing what if we do have vulnerabilities. So I gotta appreciate the IT crew for always kind of keeping an eye on those kind of things, because there's always seems to be something in the news or wherever, hearsay or not hearsay of just different things that are happening in the IT world, and our guys are always keeping track of that. And so that's the end of my report, and happy to take any questions. Commissioner Deshmani?
Yeah, two comments. One is about regarding the cybersecurity. I just want to say how I very much appreciate the program that we're subscribed to, the commissioners have access to and benefit from. It has helped me personally. It's helped me stay attuned.
That's
And
great.
obviously, commissioners aren't as much of a threat to the PUD because we're outside the firewall, which is a good thing. But certainly, it's beneficial for us to be aware of the cybersecurity issues. And so thank you for that, and keep up the good work, at least as far as what I see. And the other thing I wanted to say is very much appreciate your engaging us on this recruitment, or trying to find a suitable candidate for the project manager position. We received an email from Lisa, and really glad for that, and my gears are turning. Obviously, we're all in a race to see who finds the right person.
Okay, great.
But I'm happy that we're being engaged. I really appreciate you guys engaging us. I mean, obviously, we won't always deliver for you, but we want to try. And we like feeling, I'm going to speak for myself, I'm going to speak for you, but I like feeling like I have the potential of contributing something in that regard. Yeah.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Commissioner. I mean, that's all I have.
Oh, wow. All right. Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Okay, now we can get on to that old business.
So we're gonna start with broadband.
Yeah.
And I just wanna say that, I have never, ever, under any circumstances, state or federal, seen a notice of funding opportunity altered after it's initially dropped. This one is now in its 5th version. A new version dropped last week, and Andrew and many others have been deeply engaged in kind of analyzing what it means and what we need to do about it. And at that point, I'll shut up and turn over to someone who's really read it all the way through.
I was looking for Andrew over there. He's like,
No,
over here,
make
okay.
a presentation.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
John. Before I start, Tyler Schroeder from the Port of Bellingham was going to be attending with us and kind of tag teaming the presentation, but he had a 10 a.m. hard stop. So he also let me know that he'd like me to share with all of you that he expresses his compliments to the PUD Commission on our partnership. So, brief presentation to give you an update on where we are with the BEAD program. We've talked quite a bit, but you'll see some recycled slides, but I wanted to throw them in there as well for the commissioner's benefit. So the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program that we're talking about, and what does that mean? It's a federal funded grant program for broadband infrastructure that came out of the bipartisan infrastructure law. You hear us talk about the first round of grants that are becoming available. And so what's happening is the program is administered by an outfit called NTIA, or the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. And what they've charged all the state broadband offices to do is provide quality broadband service for everyone who's getting a poor internet service today. And by poor, I mean by, if you're getting less than 100 megabytes per second down and 20 up, if you're getting anything below that, you're considered to have poor broadband. And then there's another tier, which is unserved, which is 25.3 and below. So what this program aims to do is to bring all of those folks who have 120 and below speeds up to reliable broadband service today. And so they've structured this, the state broadband office has structured this through 3 different rounds of funding that will be made available. First round is open now, as you know, and the deadline is the 31st of this month. They prioritized fiber optics as the primary technology. They also said in the second round, they'll allow for hybrid solutions, so fiber and wireless. And then the third round is the option for the state broadband office to work directly with the local internet service provider directly, assuming that nobody's funded in round 1 or round 2. So there's different project areas that we'll get to in just a minute. There's 11 project areas in our community. And so the state has sliced up all the project areas by a county basis. And they told us that although there's these second rounds and this third round, we want to see your all fiber or your all fiber build and your hybrid, your fiber and wireless at the same time, all in round 1, because they're not really anticipating to have any funding left over for round 2 or round 3 anyway. So that's what we're aiming to do in our projects. We'll talk about here in just a minute. We're planning to have, here's the all fiber build. Might be a little bit of a shock in terms of the dollar amount to the broadband office, but we'll also put in our hybrid application at the same time. And I welcome Chris to comment at any time throughout this presentation. If you'd like.
So one thing that was added was, I believe in the second round, low Earth orbit, LEO, was allowed as a solution, which was, to me, a surprise. Maybe it was there in the earlier NOFOs, but it was kind of like a, really? So now Starlink can actually compete.
So, just wanted to, ask that, I know Commissioner Arnett's a little bit cold, can we raise the temperature just a little bit in here?
I'll find out, I really don't know.
Sorry to bother you.
Clarify LEO.
I could just.
Lower Earth
I'm using this excuse.
Yeah, I do, I just appreciate, being new here to spell out acronyms, just for the benefit of.
I asked the
Contextual.
same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, didn't you have like a quarter jar or something?
Yes, that was my suggestion.
Yeah, I would be
Yeah.
in favor of continuing.
Okay,
that.
yeah. No acronyms.
It's just informal rule.
Who said LEO first? Was it Chris?
Chris did.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. I have a couple. Actually, we're doing okay on it, because there's a lot of other bodies that do a lot worse of it, but I'm not saying it's an excuse, we keep getting better, but.
Yeah.
Boy, I hear a lot of.
Acronyms. Using acronyms, people don't understand.
LEO.
Gonna get you,
I
gonna
said
get
low
you,
Earth orbit.
He knows.
gonna get you a quarter jar.
I said low
You
Earth
did.
orbit.
You did.
Yeah, just,
You did.
just being used to hearing that as law enforcement officer, just, it's like.
Yeah.
You know, just- I know that's not, I figured what you.
Well, if it's a drone, maybe, just
Lower, anyway, well, please proceed.
Perfect. Okay, so that's the timeline in a nutshell. We can talk for a much longer period of time just about the timelines themselves, but we won't, I don't think that's necessary. So the way we've structured our approach to BEAD is a public-private partnership, which means a public entity in the community would apply as the lead applicant, and they would have a committed internet service provider partner who would be the one providing the services to the end user customers. And we've agreed as a consortium that the Port of Bellingham would be the lead applicant for the BEAD application rounds. So Port of Bellingham would act as the lead applicant, and as the public entity, you're eligible to capture the 25% match from the state. The state's covering 25% match, which is a requirement under the Notice of Funding Opportunity or the BEAD grant application. So if you're a private internet service provider applying for a project area on your own, you're not eligible to draw down the 25%. You have to come up with that on your own. And so this structure allows for the lead applicant being a public entity to draw down that 25% match from the state. And they'll own the project for 10 years, which is per the BEAD Notice of Funding Opportunity. And then they'll bond the project. And there's some discussions right now about how the port can mitigate the bonding risk on to the internet service provider for the BEAD requirements, but that's still more conversations to come. what we're asking the internet service providers to bring to the table is we're asking them to do all the design and the engineering, permits, building, operating, maintaining the network, project, again, for the requirements. We've asked them if they are agreeable and the providers we're working with are open to open access stipulations, and that they would provide dark fiber strands in the project areas for public benefit. And then this is what's called, we wrap this up later, not before the application, but let's say we get funded for some of the project areas. We'd wrap these terms up into an IRU or irrevocable right to use agreement. I got my acronym. I get to keep my 25 cents. So it's just a legal mechanism that John could probably talk a lot more in detail about than I, but it's the legal framework that allows the public entity to work with the private entity through an arrangement with these terms as kind of as the business negotiations kind of settle through a contingency agreement. So this is wrapped up into a contingency agreement with providers who can say, are you agreeable to these terms? They say yes. We sign a non-binding letter and we move forward with an application.
So before we move on,
Sure.
this commission approved a 20-year request. I realize that there's negotiation to be done.
You approved a 20-year request on the Point Roberts, which is outside of.
No, it was on these two.
We were specific that we had a 10-year and that we would try and work a 20-year, but
Yes,
the,
that we would try and work a 20-year.
and we're still committed to that. The Point Roberts one was done under WISBO, which is a 25-year,
Yeah.
and that's different timeline altogether.
But what, I'm just bringing it up because, and actually, you're right, actually, the commissioner requested 25, not 20, I misspoke.
We committed to attempt to negotiate that.
Yeah, okay.
With no guarantee of success.
But I'm just saying the slide shows 10, so.
That's what the notice of funding opportunity of BEAD says. It specifies 10 years.
What that's not what that bullet says, the bullet's under Port of Bellingham, it says, owns a project for 10 years. So,
Per bead,
but, okay,
yeah.
but that's negotiable, so why can't we put 10 to 25 in that bullet point?
We've committed to try and negotiate a longer term than what's specified in BEAD.
It doesn't
But it
look like
requires,
that.
but it
Look at the
requires two
slide.
parties to agree.
If I look at the slide, it doesn't show that one, that you're trying to negotiate a 20 to 25.
We're trying to negotiate the 25.
Okay.
What BEAD
All
requires
right,
is.
thanks for the clarification. Okay.
So we've tried really hard to create a level playing field for all the providers and who want to partner with a public entity. And basically what that means is by partnering with a public entity, they're essentially getting local oversight over their project throughout the construction of the project. So not everyone wants to partner with a public entity. We have providers who are going after project areas all on their own. They're going to bring their own cash match of the 25%. Some are even bringing additional dollars in addition to the 25% match. They're bringing, cost per home pass subsidy as well to help bring the cost down, because under BEAD, it's a race to the bottom. It's really and so the most number of homes for the fewest costs. And then there's some other scoring mechanisms in there as well, or mechanisms in there that help you get a higher score. But right off the bat, they just take what dollar amount you're asking for under BEAD, and then they're dividing that by the total number of VSLs, and that's how you get your foot in the door. Essentially, there's
So-
also
Broadband service.
This statement, a race to the bottom. I mean, when you talk about evolution of the NOFA, I mean, this is, it's first time, maybe you said it before, but it's first time it's registering to me, this, kind of, flavor of the solicitation. Is that, I mean, is that? I mean, if you were to say one phrase that describes the difference between this and the previous iteration, which we applied for in one, it's, this one's very much focused on this race to the bottom. Would you agree?
Yes, and there was a similar metric in the WISBO ones, and I don't know if we shared with you the table which showed the cutoff, but it was literally by cost per connect cost per pass.
Oh, right, I remember you presenting.
Yeah, and it went down, and then when they ran out of money, that was the end, that's how they ranked it. So in a sense, it was a race to the bottom, even then, but they weren't, well, it was more of a friend, this is not as friendly.
Yeah.
One thing, you do have a hard stop at 11, is that
That's
correct?
right, yes.
We
yeah.
have three
A lot of
critical,
things,
we have
yeah.
three critical pieces of business after
Mhm.
this.
Okay.
And if we eliminate everything else on the.
All right, yeah, let's go, okay.
Okay, this is not an exhaustive list of providers, but the idea is just to let you know that we're working with providers who want to compete collaboratively under BEAD. But we know that there's more than 12,000 unserved locations, and you can see from Glacier, they're on the right side of the screen, all the way to still some in Point Roberts, and we'll get to that in just a minute. These locations are spread out, very difficult to get to. We're tracking the historical change of the broadband serviceable locations, which has been a process in itself. Each iteration, there's a change in the number of served and unserved, underserved locations, and we have it broken out by technology here. But the important part is that number of the underserved and unserved are at the bottom, which is how we get to that 12,000 homes, which under B, we will be required to submit a plan up to WISBO, the Washington State Broadband Office, how we're going to serve all of those 12,165 locations. But then you think, wait, there's already been areas that have been previously funded in our community. And I won't go through each one by one, but there's some of the RDOF funding that we talked about in previous commission meetings. You can see the linear routes there above, north of Linden. Those are the Port of Bellingham's projects. We have our Point Roberts project, that linear route going from Point Roberts down to Lummi. That's a middle mile project that would be received, so on and so forth. This is a table version of that map that you just saw broken out by the source of funding and the number of locations that are going to be served. And that's really important because the reason I want to show you this, going back to B, is these addresses that are captured in already funded project areas or previous grants, those are taken out of that 12,000 number. And so by the time we get to the project areas that the state produced for us, we have 11 of them. We know that there's roughly 8,000 addresses remaining after they've taken out those green areas and all the address points that are within those green areas. And then they have this process for providers to say, we serve this address point, we don't serve that address point. And there's the long challenge process and the post challenge process and ongoing iterations of the locations that are what are called BEAD eligible, which is a fancy way of saying they're the unserved and underserved locations. So this map is showing the project areas. You can see the table on the bottom shows the Port of Bellingham being the lead applicant with a committed private partner, one of those providers we had shown in the previous slide. And you'll see there's two areas, project area 185, which is up here right to the west of Sumas, but north of Nooksack, kind of right there on the border. I don't know if you can see my cursor, it's kind of small. We know that a provider is planning to go after that project area on their own. And then the same with project area 1, which is Lummi Island. And then there's project area 219 out here, which is the Diablo area. And today we don't know of any providers who are planning to go after that on their own, and we don't know of anyone who wants to partner with a public entity today to go after project area 219 or 192. This is the Highway 9 heading down into Skagit. This is a big blob of green, which is Zipley's RDOF area, which is taking up a huge chunk of that project area, which is we don't know for sure if Zipley's planning to apply directly for that project area, but we know today that there aren't any existing providers who want to go after project area 192. So I'm just calling those as not feasible for round 1. And then the other two project areas.
Why wouldn't Zipley want to partner with us on that?
They've been quiet in sharing their strategy for BEAD or what they intend to do under BEAD.
So the bottom line is we've met with them many times. Andrew and I have met with them a few times. Andrew's met with them many times. And we've asked this question of them directly and they're not answering.
So we've actually brought them flowers, we've asked them out on a date, and they just won't respond to go to lunch.
They just have their own way of doing it, and it's apparently not gonna include us.
Okay.
Exactly right. In the fifth version, as Chris pointed out, there's been multiple iterations of the notice of funding opportunity. We're on our fifth one. There were some costs that the state broadband office is suggesting will be suffice to cover each of the project areas in Whatcom County. And I'm calling this the WISBO fantasy because we're modeling all of these, or most all of these project areas. And if we just pick on project area 5, I'll kind of go back here so you can see project area 5 is that one right there in the middle, kind of northeast of the city of Bellingham. The estimate that WISBO, their Cost Quest, which is, a third-party entity who puts together this modeling, says about 2.8 million for all fiber to serve the 926 locations. When we modeled this project area 5 out, we're at 16 million. And then you think we take the 25% out, so now you're at like 12. And then you think if a provider who we're partnering with wants to throw in $1,000 per BSL, that's times 926. Now you're at a $8 million ask. So it's not quite tenfold, but it's 5 times more than what some of these estimates are coming in from the state broadband office. And you kind of keep going down, the list here, and you just see we're just coming in a lot higher than all of the project area costs that are coming out of the WISBO NOFO.
And in the NOFO, these are the voting costs. They want you to be under these to have an eligible submission. So, I mean, one thing to look at is that we don't believe that's realistic at all.
In a way, they're setting a threshold. If you can't line up with this number, then don't apply. Is that, would you say that that's what they're saying or no?
Well, that's kind of how we read it.
Yeah, I think after round 1, we'll know what's called the extremely high cost threshold. And that's important because that's where you can kick your project over from an all fiber build to a hybrid build, which is the fiber and wireless solution. And so we're intending to put, like I mentioned, an all fiber package in, which would be that 16 million minus the 20%. That would be our ask for project area 5, for example. And then we would also put in our wireless estimates. But the wireless is still going to come in maybe even higher than some of these fiber estimates. And there are wireless estimates in the NOFO as well. And some of the wireless is actually cheaper, or excuse me, the fiber in some cases is cheaper and under their modeling than the wireless, which is very interesting and kind of makes you raise your eyebrow.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about their modeling process.
Mhm.
Doesn't seem right.
It doesn't seem right. Wireless should be cheaper.
It should be generally.
Yeah. And low density, it should be cheaper, for sure.
It causes us to wonder about their modeling.
Yeah.
It's not the output you'd expect. So, maybe they're right and there's something weird going on in a particular area. I don't know, but I don't think so.
So, I mean, all that to say, in terms of our competitiveness, I think the broadband office at least will have a minor shock when we come in with our local estimates, based on, projects here in Whatcom County, compared to their estimates. And could kick us into round 2, which we'll talk about more, but we'll, like I said, put an application in regardless for, at least what we want to do is have all the project areas minus those 2 that we've deemed kind of not feasible, but everyone else, we want to make sure that there's an application either by a public and private partnership or a private entity going at it alone. That's okay. So there's the speed decision matrix. Kind of just to wrap up here, we've talked a little bit about the Point Roberts project, and there'll be more progress reports on the status of the Point Roberts project. But the idea is to roll that project into an IRU that would be housed under the Port of Bellingham as well. But kind of the main point of this slide is to call out the project areas that the Port of Bellingham has, and kind of generally speaking, what they're looking at is whether they have enough grant dollars to cover those projects. And it really hinders on who they choose to partner with on those project areas, because if those projects don't get built, for example, that might impact who they partner with, because those projects aren't entirely built yet. They have funding, they're up in, they're going through design right now, but they're not necessarily built. So that's part of the B decision matrix that the port is looking at as they decide on who they want to partner with through these project areas.
Briefly clarify what you mean by roll into an IRU.
Sure. So these project areas are all on the Port of Bellingham side. They're all they're structured as an IRU today.
Indefensible right to use, it's essentially granting a right to use the site.
Yes.
Meaning the ownership is immediately going to the private sector internet service provider.
And it would allow dark fiber for public use for the term of the IRA. And the only place we're rolling it in is Point Roberts. And the issue there is, it's a mechanical issue. We've checked with Wisbo, Andrew's checked with Wisbo, the broadband organization. It's checked with Wisbo, they're fine. So it's just a matter of rewriting the contract with them to specify it's a port IRU instead of the original contract that we had, and that's how that gets rolled.
Thank you. It would be consistent with the larger countywide approach.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions, but I do want to remind people we only have 40 minutes.
Yeah,
and we
I'm
have a
comfortable
lot.
discussing this more later.
Okay, yeah, I am too. I'm
And
gonna
I
have.
don't think we had a decision point for you guys.
Okay.
It was just, this is the latest thing that's come out, and there's probably gonna be decisions that need to be made on the port projects in specific, but those are gonna be made by the port commission. And our recommendation is, we gotta do what makes sense to get the most customer service environment.
Mhm.
And we have access to you and to Andrew if we have questions.
Maybe more of an update at the next meeting or
And more,
It's actually on every agenda.
every agenda, right? Yeah, so, yeah.
I just want to repeat again, this is not, the E shouldn't be in there. It should just be called bad.
Yeah.
Broadband access
Fair,
to point. I mean, and it is actually getting more bad than it was when it
It
started.
starts kind of curious.
But the equity doesn't really belong, because they really are doing nothing to address it.
So the three things that I consider critical, you guys,
Yeah.
it's your meeting, so you can disagree, but we've got the strategic plan. I've got a proposal for that. I need your head nod. You guys need to decide who's on first.
Yeah.
Who's got which commission, which assignments in the commission. And then I've got an absolutely time critical thing I have to talk to you about in executive session before we come out, and that's.
Oh, contract. Yeah.
Our labor contract, that's right.
Is there anything on adjudication and geothermal that has to be said today?
No,
No.
nothing's gonna happen next 2 weeks,
Okay.
adjudication, I can't tell you about it.
Well, let's move to the strategic plan update then.
All right. So I forwarded out to
It
you
all
guys.
got settled, sorry guys.
Yeah.
It was all settled. No more communication.
So I forwarded out the three offers that we
Yes.
have, and
You're here too.
my recommendation is we go with the Mall Foster Lodging. I thought it was best fit for our organization, and it's within my authority, so we don't have a resolution, you don't have to pass anything. But I'm doing it for you, so I want you
Yeah.
to say, yeah, we agree, go. So your options are to say that, yeah, we agree, go, or no, we want you to pick this other one, or we want you to go back and try and get more offers. So those are the three options. Having said that, I think that the Mall Foster Along is a very good offer. And
It's a great proposal, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, having reviewed their application, I agree, and I believe they are the right firm, and so I would move to approve.
Well, I looked at the applications.
Okay.
One of the things that of course, I know David, he's done good work for our local governments, and I appreciate that very much. The on strategy proposal. Well, there are several things I really liked about it. The first was, in response, I guess it'd be helpful for me to know, what was your request, Chris? What did you put in your request for support? Did we get a copy of that from these?
I believe so. It was the first week of December, I think, that I sent it out.
Well, one of the things I really liked is the chart,
I do need to say, I made it very broad, very open-ended.
I thought it was
not
very,
specific.
yeah, and what I like about what On Strategy had to say, in particular. Was, that I really liked their presentation. And in that one curve, that one S curve. Set your big bold vision, build a winning strategy, create team goals. And we've talked about our strategic planning as a vehicle to also to increase teamwork, particularly between the commission and the executive. And then also the emphasis on setting and achieving targets. Something that is referenced in their presentation are things that, that I've mentioned in, and I had no conversation with these people, so I'm surprised to see that they captured these points like key performance indicators, KPIs, which can be part of how we monitor organizational health from the commission's perspective. So I love the fact that David and his team here are local, but there's things in this presentation in terms of approach that I really like. So I don't know if it's possible to hybridize.
If I may,
You didn't provide a ton of direction to.
if I may, jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when I read this is not a strategic planning process. This is how you put together a business plan. And it assumes that one of two things, either you're living on a short product life cycle, which is really what it's geared towards, or you already have a strategic plan and what they're trying to do is get the short-term operationalization. It's not even a word, I'm sorry. But to reduce it to, as you said, key performance indicators, KPIs, that are, you can actually put in your budget and that kind of stuff. So, and in fact, in here, if you read through this, and I did talk to the guys, they assume you've already got your vision, mission, values, your strategic objectives, and essentially your strategic plan built. And then that's an input to their product.
Okay, now this really helps. Thanks for this
Yeah.
comment. Because
So, I'm with you 100%. I looked at this and my first thing was, well, shit, man, we just get there. Pardon me.
Yeah.
I'm good at doing it.
I think I started
Can
it.
someone
Get
get
Another jar now.
Yeah, it's a different jar. It's not a KPI jar. Or, yeah. Anyway.
So this is somebody that we might use later.
Yes.
Or, yeah, and it talks about 3 to 5 years in here on strategy, and that was an instant like red flag for me, a little,
It's an
that,
operation plan.
right, and we're looking longer term, as we need to, because utilities.
Thank you.
My HR person is about to stomp on you.
No, I just, I really appreciate
Yeah.
the discussion. There's another, aspect that I want to bring up that really not specific to any of these three proposals. But, way I characterize it is that there's utility organizations that are, in a process of organic growth.
Mhm.
And we're a little bit different than that. We're taking some moonshots. I mean, G-Therm was a moonshot. Let's see, well, we may be exploring other things in a big way. I mean, adjudication may create some amazing opportunities for us.
Much of what we do doesn't even start for 15 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, so where I'm going with this point is that the strategic planning process is for us is a little bit unique because we are like we looked at of course, it didn't make sense at the present time, but we looked at municipalization. That was a big reach. So I just want to make that as a caveat, and so I want us to think about and in our strategic planning process, that. And we did that, and under your leadership, you brought up this point of what is your 50-year target kind of thing.
Yeah, where do you want to be?
Yeah.
Then.
And as long as we're managing the process, that's really important, is for us to be recognizing the fact that we're an organization that may be taking some big shots in the future. And that's. So, thanks for the clarification about the non-strategy.
Yeah, we got 3 good offers.
They're great
Yeah.
offers.
But they're
Yeah.
very different products,
Mhm.
and, you know, for the strategic plan, I feel that Foster LNG is the way to go. So if I've got 3 head nods on that, then when we leave here, I'll notify everybody, and then I'll begin negotiating a contract with them. My goal would be to have this completed in July. Their timeline was about 6 months, and they proposed June. I'm it's gonna take us a month to get this off the ground, but it does start with visioning and finding common ground and all that stuff, and then it moves forward in traditional strategic planning.
Fantastic.
Great, and I saw Dave was taking good notes. That's great.
Give you a call.
Board clarification, commissioners, that is a approval of all 3 of you to go with. Okay.
It's not a motion per
It's
se,
not a motion.
because it's not an approval of a
There had
contract.
not,
So
there
it's-
had not.
I just want to make sure that everybody was gonna be
In
happy.
what stops? Was it 1 or 2 for a work side?
Okay, so. The next thing will be, assignments.
Yes, yeah, well, our reorg, first of all, right?
Yeah,
That's what it says there. So reorg meaning we go from, we do a little switcheroo, who does president, vice president, secretary. Normally, we just rotate, right? So it was a tool, and then it was me, and then it would have been Christine, recognizing that you're in Christine's position and you're very new. You know, I don't know what everybody's feeling about that. Like, if you want to take over that role, if that role goes to a tool and then back to, you know, however that looks.
Yeah, we're here for a long time,
Yeah.
but Eddie's only here for 2 years.
That's correct.
So I think it's really important that recognizing, I mean, not,
He could run again.
yeah, so, but your term is only 2 years, so. So what I'd like to propose is that I'm the chair. You're the vice chair, Eddie's the secretary, and with the understanding that normally we kind of have vice
Mhm.
president, but Eddie would be the chair next year, and so he'd have to study me meticulously and take careful notes at every decision.
And then don't do anything that he does.
I like this proposal. Yeah, granted, it's out of the normal rotation, but it would be unusual for a newly seated commissioner to immediately assume the role of president, and I'm happy to be secretary this year with that understanding that I could we vote a year from now, but that I could be chair the next year.
Sure,
Yeah.
done deal.
Okay.
And then there were all of the other assignments.
That's right.
Assignments, council of governments.
So do we have a list? I started
So do
writing
this-
a list.
See this in, Commissioner, I was in your packets, I cleared out a section, but what I
Oh, I
want
think I
to
missed
do
it
with
then.
this, if you'll allow, I
Yeah.
just
Last
received an
page?
email yesterday
It's the last
from Wakuda going over what they have listed as their current commissioners in those positions.
Mhm.
I would like to go one by one, read them to you, and if you have any changes, we'll note them and I can get back to the Wakuda today.
Sure.
So, this, last update is as of June 3rd of last year. Board of Directors is Commissioner Arnett as the designee and Commissioner Deshmani as the alternate.
Mhm.
Is, you want that to still stand, or do we want to swap it?
I'm fine
It's a
maintaining
great,
that
the
role,
board of
yeah.
directors, you can attend remotely too, and I'm trying to get into it.
Oh.
And the reason that it's a great recap of the whole week at the board of directors.
It's an 8
on
AM
Friday.
meeting though, right? 8 or
8:30.
8:30, yeah.
But it's a recap of the whole week of meetings. They have committee.
So all of these committees give reports, all of the other committees
Right.
give reports.
Well, I would happy to.
You can be the primary or be the alternate, whatever you prefer.
Well, okay, I'll say what I came in with as you know, I would like to serve on the energy committee.
Okay,
I would be willing to be an alternate for either of the other committees, directors or government relations, if so wished. Although is it customary to have another commissioner, right, not a staff member, be the alternate?
Yeah, no, it's, on these,
It
who are these,
depends.
it's always,
Depends on-
almost always, yeah.
Okay, but
Except
for
for the
those,
managers, of course.
but for those two, it would, or,
Mhm.
yeah, but I'd like to be on energy.
So you wanna be the alternate on the board?
Would that, I mean, I guess, would you like to remain as the primary?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine doing, I always enjoy, for the same reason that you noted, though, I always enjoy attending because it is a recap and I don't attend all of the other committee meetings.
Does can the alternate not also attend? as
You
a-
can
as a
also-
non-voting?
Yeah, you sure can.
Yeah.
Just make sure, you know, if, assuming Billy's there, that she does.
And I will always let you know if I need you to attend,
Right.
right, which happens sometimes.
That's not,
And that kind of direct communication is not a problem.
Yeah.
yeah,
It doesn't require.
Attending
a forum or
meetings,
anything like that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
I'm gonna pencil you in as the alternate. then.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's what I've got.
okay. That's-
And then second is managers committee, that's covered.
that's probably-
Yeah,
Government relations is primary. Is Commissioner Arnett and alternate is Commissioner Deshmani. Is there any changes there?
I do wanna note something about this, government relations and communication meets at the same time. They're like it's like a hybrid committee, so they meet at the same time, so whoever is the primary representative for government relations should also be for communications, it doesn't make sense for them not to be.
Okay,
Okay,
Do you want primary for both?
Well, I don't have the same draw to the energy committee or the telecom committee that
Okay.
other people do, so I'm happy to stay in that role.
okay, we do need an alternate.
so maybe, I'll be alternate on government relations.
But you're alternate on both then?
Yeah, it has to be on both,
Oh.
yeah,
Oh, it has to be on both?
because they meet at the same
Yeah,
time.
it's really one committee.
It's really one
Okay.
committee, I don't know why we haven't, yeah,
Is that okay then?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll be alternate.
you wanna be alternate on that?
For both?
It's a fun committee.
Yeah, I would like to, yeah.
Okay, then I'll switch that up. All right. And then so Jamie will be primary. Okay, next, energy, you already said primary, and we've got Kurt as
So I'll
second.
be the alternate. on-
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So, sorry, Kurt, you got a job.
We can all attend, by the way.
Yeah,
Water committee.
and for your benefit, I love doing the water things, the water committee at Wapuda is significantly less interesting than other water things because they spend a lot of time talking about drinking water.
Yeah.
And we don't,
Lead contamination,
Yes,
PFAS.
yeah.
And the municipal water law.
yeah, and municipal water.
That's cool.
Yeah,
That part's
yeah.
not- Yeah, it's not us.
Well, would you, is that you sort of suggesting that you're not dying to?
I'm not
serve?
done, I'm not done.
I'll take,
Okay,
I'll take.
all right.
You were last year, I'll do it
Yes,
this year.
okay.
And I'm happy to continue to be the alternate,
Okay.
because I have to be there anyway.
Mhm.
I'm always there listening.
Okay,
Are any of us still permitted to attend these?
Yes,
Yeah,
all,
right,
all,
of course,
yes,
yeah.
yeah. And then telecom, okay.
so
This one's a-
I think I'd like to stay on telecom.
what's
Either
interesting.
primary or alternate, I don't care which one.
What's interesting, and you guys
Yeah,
can
I
correct
agree.
me on this, but in their form that they sent me for telecom, they've got it blacked out, so I don't know if we never had anybody that
We
they.
do have people that go, they probably had it blacked out because we didn't have an actual
Customer.
That's right.
customer.
Yeah.
So,
So we're non-voting still.
Yes,
Yeah.
Ah, gotcha.
but
So-
a tool has signaled he would like to be on that.
Yeah, and they treat me like a voting member, except I just don't vote.
Okay.
You don't wanna be the
And-
alternate.
Andrew was on there as the alternate, but we can adjust
Oh.
that.
Yeah. I don't
Uh,
care.
Andrew, would you like to remain or
Sure call.
It's like,
not? Do you feel like you have enough
And,
meetings
and
and
can you guys send an invoice to, Weedbeatel, so that we can do, I can start voting? Just, you know, $1.
Gotta have a customer.
Gotta have a customer, sell them some gum or something.
I'd be happy with Andrew simply because I feel like he would better represent the organization than I in the event that Atul was not present.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I love seeing Andrew on.
I'm just gonna remind you, you have 20 minutes.
yeah, okay, we got
Okay.
this
Yeah,
one,
got it.
okay.
Go with.
The Whatcom County Economic Development Investment Board, you're currently the
I am,
delegate for
yeah.
that?
Yeah,
Do you have interest in that?
I kind of would like to stay there, and the reason
Oh,
because
okay.
it's like, there's been this long, change, that shift of the EDI role.
Mhm.
And like, and it hasn't all been implemented, I wanna see it through.
Okay,
So, basically they've been adding affordable housing and I'm trying to make sure that they continue to focus on economic development too, if you know what I'm saying.
sure.
So,
Alternate for that?
I'm
This is
fine
one
with
where we haven't had an alternate, and Commissioner Vashmani's called me a couple times and couldn't make it, and I've been there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm happy to continue that. I
Okay.
wouldn't normally be there as an alternate.
that. Would you
Yeah.
like to be the alternate for that?
I would. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Cool.
Okay, now, Welcome County Council of Governments.
I guess, actually, sorry, did we miss the, I would also be willing to be alternate on water committee if Chris didn't feel like it was the best use of time for that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I'll make that
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. And I would like to serve on WCOG.
Okay.
Okay.
So as the delegate.
yes,
And the
yeah, I was
alternate,
just filling in for Christine on that,
Uh,
and there's one tomorrow.
Well, I'd be happy to be the delegate, or
Well,
alternate,
well,
if
are you
one of
going-
you wanted
are
to
you
be.
going to
Yeah.
Olympia? You are going to Olympia?
Yes, yeah.
But there's a Welcome Council.
There is a conflict on Wednesday's meeting, yes. So I wouldn't be able to attend that one as.
What time is
It's at the
Wednesday's
same
meeting?
time as one of the PUD things that.
It's commissioner training, yeah, and you should be there. I will attend COG this week then.
so you want to be the
Yeah.
alternate, okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was
Vashmani will
even
be
like I think it was an
alternate.
energy committee meeting.
So firms.
No, that's Thursday.
Is that Thursday?
COG is Wednesday.
Okay, so it's.
All right,
it is the
gentlemen, we
training.
gotta move forward. Herms.
So if we're
Firm's like
alternate,
beyond exciting, and I just want to say that I'm not gonna let anybody touch it.
Okay.
Don't you dare even think about
I wasn't raising my hand on that one,
Yeah.
so it's
No, I'll
cool.
continue to serve on both their management committee and as an alternate.
it. Yeah, and that has been supporting extensively on that front, but I'd like to have my name there because they say they want to have an elected in that capacity. So,
So who's the alternate for that?
and that,
Annette? Okay.
for firms,
And then Wyra one is me, my baby.
you stick with
Of course.
it, yeah, you did great. Yeah.
I would like to serve on Energy Northwest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be your alternate.
Please, yes.
Yeah, all right. City of Bellingham Broadband Advisory Group.
That's not existing.
I was
Yeah,
just
we
gonna
don't-
say, are we doing that anymore?
That's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
Right.
I'll remove that.
excellent, we got that
I
done.
would like us to on executive sessions.
Okay, executive session. It is 10:42. We are going to, end the public portion of this meeting and go into executive session. It should take until.
Postpone the public portion. Depending on your decision.
Everybody's moving, but I didn't say when we were coming back or how long the meeting was
As soon as-
supposed to
as soon as we
be.
can
Yeah,
10 minutes, we'll be coming back out of executive session 5 to 11.
we'll be coming out of the executive session 5 to 11. Sounds good. That we're back. It's 10:58. We're back from executive session. We will be discussing resolution number 870, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Whatcom County Public Utility District Number 1, directing the general manager to authorize a labor agreement with General Teamsters Union Local 231.
I'll make a motion to adopt that resolution.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you so much.
I have no more matters to bring before the board today.
Great.
We have things that we didn't resolve, commissioner reports and stuff like that, but we will do that next time.
Put a pin in them.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 10:59 and this meeting is adjourned. I will